And we are live. Venom 2D thoughts. Yes, the theater near me, at least right now, does not have any 3D showings. So, yeah. We are gonna dive headfirst right into notes taken while watching. I thought that, we have the opening with the space shuttle crashing. I was not sure if we were going to see any of the symbiote planet in this movie, and I think ultimately it's probably good that we didn't, because it is, the symbiote concept is already, a lot to take in. Just so I don't forget, right before pressing record on this, I watched the midnight screenings episode of this Joe Blow movie review, I think it was, and Film Brain's projector review, and I agree with a lot of what the various ones said. I'm going to try not to restate what they've said. I don't think the movie's anywhere near as bad as, Film Brain says, but yeah, I guess this is a perfectly fine place to... I was entertained by the movie throughout. I enjoyed watching it. I didn't... The things that are wrong with it were not ones that bothered me personally all that much, but you can definitely tell that a bunch was cut out, and that was not just like random violence, but actually character stuff. Certainly seems like to me. And you can... The tone is definitely uneven. Now... Right, so we see the shuttle crash and symbiote. And we were told one symbiote has, has left the, and there's one astronaut alive, and they don't say, I don't know, I guess this is not really me inferring, they basically say, this is Jameson, so this is the astronaut, son of J. Jonah Jameson. And, I mean, right, for those who are new to my videos, I am going to be spoiling... I don't know if I'm necessarily going to say something about every single movie, but I'm going to be spoiling the Spider-Man movies up to this point. I'm going to assume that you have watched those movies. And just, to briefly, spoil Spider-Man 3, Nostalgia Critic points out that it would have made a lot of sense for, instead of Topher Grace playing Eddie Brock, it being the, milquetoast guy from the second movie, who is an astronaut and who has, he lost Mary Jane to Peter, so he has a grudge there, and he's an astronaut, so he goes to space, he comes back with the symbiote already on him. Yeah, that would have made a ton of sense. And we see that goes from Jameson to infect the Asian woman, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not think that this movie would have a scene where Michelle Williams and Tom Hardy basically do a pillow fight. That really surprised me. That felt like something that could have been in Spider-Man 3. Now, and we see various clips of Eddie doing the show. I thought that was a perfectly fine way to, real quick, just from that brief montage, we get that he fights for the people who don't have, whenever there's a story where someone has been mistreated by the powerful, he's on it, and he's like, see, the people don't care, and he has been having the show for a while, because we see, like, I don't know, maybe a dozen episodes just briefly clip, you know, so it's not like it's his first day or something. And yeah, we get a sense of his passion for it. And then yet he oversleeps, or almost, anyway. And he gets in, he's, talking to the security guard, I think, and he's like, there's no such thing as can't. I really thought that would come back once the symbiote bonded with him, but I don't think it did. He says it, yeah, he says it twice in that scene. He says, what did I say? What did I tell you? What? There's no such thing as can't. I forget if I already put this in some of my other notes, but is Drake supposed to be like Elon Musk? And, the movie tells us, the Daily, I think, Globe, there was an incident, and Brock misreported a story and was chased out of New York. It's really weird. They didn't need to have that in there. I mean, I don't think it really adds to anything. It's not like he's like, I can't believe I screwed up there. I'm never going to do that again. And then he messes up in another way or something. And it didn't need to be Jameson as an astronaut. I feel like parts of this are just like, some producer with a grudge has been like, if you're going to make a Venom movie, Jameson the astronaut has to be on that space shuttle, and he needs the backstory from the comics of Eddie Brock, losing his job and everything. That has to be in there. And they're like, well, it's technically in there. Sure, it's not the main backstory of the movie, but I mean, parts of what he talks about in that do happen in the movie. He loses his job, and it's an incident, and just, I don't know, it seemed like they were just, someone really badly wanted those details in there, even if it didn't really add anything. And Drake is like, it's okay, don't silence her. When you do something, some people are gonna want to silence you, and oh, I have to go to an interview now. She's in charge. She'll answer any of your questions. It's it's always good when your sinister villain has, he's good with kids. I think this was the idea. The interview between Eddie and Drake was awkward even before, like, Eddie brought up the stuff that, could really ruin Drake, and before Drake threatened him back, and all this stuff. Just, was that like the first day of shooting? And maybe Riz Ahmed, is that how you pronounce his name? Maybe he had gotten other lines, because it is awkward. Like, is it supposed to be that he doesn't do interviews usually, and this is like a one-off, and he's like, can I first go back to talking to kids about dreams? Just, it really, or did the two actors not get along or something? It just, that was really weird to me. And Drake, when it's like, I've heard you do this, and this. There's a lot of fake news out there. That's, when someone evil is confronted with their evil doings, they call that fake news. That's topical. And, because I'm not going to go too much into the film brain did a brilliant job of summing up the stupidity of the of the way that Eddie handles the whole, he breaks into her email, and then he gives information that gets both of them gets fired over it, and just, again, there's some really stupid stuff in this movie, and I'm done getting angry over things that don't matter. There are too many things that do matter that, I want to save my anger for that. I want to redirect my passion from when I'm seeing something that's not worth getting angry about, but is worth getting passionate about, to laughing uproariously at it. It is just, yeah, this particular thing I'm not gonna, because he sums it up perfectly. Just is really, really, yeah, incredibly stupid. And we see the Asian woman, she eats like an eel, I guess it is, like just raw, and and uses spice. First she like chops this one person, and then she shoots out spikes, to kill all the villagers in this market. And then there's just this one older lady that, it transfers. Yeah, at this point in the movie, we don't know that it's Riot, but at this point in the review, I do. So I'm just gonna be calling it Riot. I super liked the whole Riot. It was so freaking like Terminator, like T-1000 kind of thing. It was just Riot going between these different, individuals and transferring into a new one as like, okay, well, I gotta, let's see, Life Foundation, and it says it's in San Francisco. So I don't know if it got it off the one piece of paper. Clearly the Riot symbiote is very smart. So yeah, it gets the information about how that's, so it goes to the airport, and instead of like trying to threaten someone into giving them a plane ticket or trying to figure out, the finances and stuff, just, transports on this like 9-year-old girl. And that felt like something that's really freaking dark. I mean, we don't see it for sure, but when Riot when the 9-year-old Riot girl approaches Drake, her face is all like, Riot probably killed that little girl. Riot killed that little girl by eating her internal organs, because he knew that he wasn't gonna need her alive that much longer, so there was no need to start eating raw eels. If Riot on the plane had started acting weird, they might have landed the plane, to get her some kind of medical attention. And before Drake has the symbiote, we don't actually see someone behaving in a normal way. I mean, certainly Eddie doesn't, while also being infected by a symbiote. So you can maybe like, did Riot manage not to say or do anything weird on the entire plane ride? But then, excuse me, once Drake is in, once Riot bonds with Drake, there's no problem. So yeah, presumably Riot knew this is when I need to be cool, and enter Seth Gecko's cool book. And yeah, I think that's gonna be it for that. So, and that is also the tonal dissonance of like, ooh, pillow fight, cutesy, and then, 9-year-old girl having been, eaten to this kind of withered form. And yeah, when Drake is like talking to, I think it's to the female. The character has 2 names. The actor has 2 names. I have forgotten all 4. The girl who sucks at following people stealthily. She's talking to Drake, and he's like, "How are your kids?" Something like that. And it reminds me of this, I think, tweet I saw very recently. Like, you can say, have a nice day without any problem, But you can't say, enjoy the next 24 hours without sounding vaguely threatening. And really, I mean, all he's just saying, you know, how are your kids? I know you have family you care about. But yeah, it does sound kind of threatening. And, you know, we briefly see the Maria, I think her name, I'm going to go with Maria. Marion Marie. Marion Marie is like trying to sell back, you know, free newspapers and just, yeah, you know. And thus when we see her, you know, that I appreciate that wasn't in the trailers. Because in the movie, he recognizes her and she recognizes him. But in the trailers, you just see, oh, creepy, you know, skinny lady jumping him, and then he gets the symbiote, you know. So, yeah, it is a... When he finds that she is one of the people that, you know, he mentions, you know, you convince the most vulnerable people to do experiments that end up killing them. And, you know, I mean, we already cared, but it didn't really have a face yet. It's kind of like with the guy who makes sandwiches in Spider-Man Homecoming, where, you know, first you just have a brief scene where Peter, you know, socializes with him, you know. Yeah, they talk, they like each other, clearly. And then a little later, we see, you know, the robbery. He isn't careful enough, so there's some damage to that building, and he worries if the guy is hurt. And we have the electric guitar, you know, loud electric guitar playing from the neighbor. You know, I've seen people compare this to, you know, say it feels like a movie made 15 years ago. And some have said Catwoman. And I don't think this is nowhere near as bad as Catwoman. That movie is... I mean, you have to look very hard for directors who are capable of creating such awful films as... Is it Pignon? It's French. He does great visual effects. He did the visual effects on Alien Resurrection, and I only remember that because every so often I'll listen to the audio commentary of that, and he's on there. And he doesn't sound like an incompetent buffoon, but when he gets behind a camera instead of a computer, he becomes one. He's made some of the most unwatchable movies ever. Him and like Uwe Boll are just... Anyway, the scene of like the noisy neighbors and the eventual comeuppance, yeah, that's right out of Catwoman. I really appreciate that here the comeuppance isn't this like... I mean, ultimately, yeah, the comeuppance in Catwoman just... It goes overboard and it becomes kind of nasty, and just... Here it was genuinely funny. And Drake says he thinks the symbiotes will fix all the problems of humanity, and he's like, you know, God abandoned us, and then like 2 or 3 lines later he says, I won't abandon us this time. So, you know, he sees himself as God. And, you know, the guy dies, and he's like, bring in the next volunteer. And I appreciate that Jenny Slate, I think that's the name, man, sometimes, for just brief times, I can actually remember things. She, in the trailer, very clearly called them symbiotes. I appreciate that in the movie. I don't know if they straight up reshot or if they just ADR'd, but I definitely appreciate that, because symbiote just sounds silly. I mean... Let's see, symbiote. Yeah, it would, I mean, if they ADR'd it, it would be really obvious on the lip movements, right? So they really reshot that. I don't know. I wasn't looking at her lips when listening to that line. And what on earth did I write? Right. Jenny Slate sneaks in Eddie, and we see that, Maria, who resells free newspapers, is carrying the symbiote. And, others have pointed out, why is Eddie's body, strong enough for the symbiote? Why doesn't his get eaten? And, early on, before I had watched the entire movie, I was like, well, Maria also appears to be strong enough. But the symbiote wanted Eddie instead because he has access to the outside and he is a bigger, stronger person. And, when he busts into a restaurant and starts eating people's food, it takes them a little longer before they get him out of there. Whereas, this homeless woman, they're just immediately going to toss out. But, after a while of the movie, he's no longer so harmful to Eddie, so I don't know. Now, I realized I forgot to test the microphone, but I'm pretty sure it certainly looks like it's working. And yeah, Eddie's like stealing food off plates, and he gets into the lobster tank. I think the idea is that he's too hot because the symbiote is like, symbiote is eating his inside. Well, yeah, it would make you uncomfortable, generally uncomfortable. So he sits down in that, and then he's like comfortable, and then he grabs one of the lobsters and eats it. And he's also like, he grabs a piece of, I think lobster, and this is dead. It's dead. So yeah, the symbiote prefers to eat stuff while it's still alive. I like that Anne's new boyfriend is nice, and he helps Eddie, because he's a doctor, and it makes, I am so sick of movies where, the new boyfriend just, even if he's like vague and non-threatening, rather than really obnoxious, it used to be that, the male protagonist really wants this girl back, but she's got a new boyfriend. But it's okay, because he's an ass. So when the male protagonist, something's going to happen to get rid of him, and we don't have to feel bad for him, because it's going to be, although, with this, you do have, I guess I didn't think much about it, but yeah, we should, I guess, feel bad that Dr. Dan, is going to lose Anne if you go by the ending there. I really appreciate that Stan Lee is apparently cameoing as himself, who has this kind of meta knowledge about, because he says both of you. He's not like some random guy who sees, those two, I bet they were together, I'm going to tell him, you be nice to her, young man. No. He goes up and says, be nice to her, both of you. So either he's like drunk and seeing double for Krusties, or he knows about the symbiote, that pretty much means he is actually Stan Lee. He's met. They filmed Stan Lee walking onto the set one day. That's what it was. That was really, I enjoyed that a lot. I also really appreciate that Anne isn't just, because of Peppermint, I enjoyed Peppermint, but I really, really despise the way Taken presents women and minorities. In that, women are stupid, ungrateful, and obnoxious. And I really appreciate that that's not what Anne is here. I honestly thought, when I saw the breakup, I thought the rest of the movie she was going to be this really obnoxious, hateful shrew. But yeah, she clearly cares. She's not like, get away. She's like, are you okay? What's going on? I'm going to get my doctor boyfriend to help. And he's also like, I'm a doctor, and this is my patient. Because it's one of those magic words where suddenly it's okay. It's the fact that he's technically only now becoming the doctor's patient makes it okay that, otherwise they were going to throw him out, which, I mean, clearly something's going on with this guy. I get why you maybe don't want, maybe they're worried about what he's going to do to the patrons or something, but maybe at least get the guy in contact with some sort of medical professional so that things can be just, yeah. Am I recently in the middle of the, yeah, this is gonna have to do. So I really appreciate that. In general, I forget if I put this in the notes taken while watching, but especially at the end, Anne really reminded me of Gwen, especially in the second movie. So I appreciate they didn't kill her off. Yeah, it was like, I can't believe you left me here where I had trouble getting to you and help. I'm sorry, I'm never not gonna love, him, webbing her to the, okay, you can come with me, just, close the trunk. And she grabs it and he webs it to the, and he's like, I'm sorry, don't hate me. And he walks off and she's like, Peter! And the fact that it was apparently like an ad-lib, like just, she didn't actually have a line there. I guess she was just supposed to stand there staring or something. Which, that would have worked as well. I'm not saying it wouldn't have, but she was so in character that she was like, no, Gwen is not gonna, she's gonna shout out, come back here, and yeah, what do when you yell for someone you care about to come back to you? You yell their first name, However, given that he's in a costume, yelling his name, everybody knows, everyone in the entire universe of the first two Amazing Spider-Man movies, every single one, yes, I'm being sarcastic, is aware of the fact that Gwen Stacy is with Peter Parker. So if Spider-Man and Gwen are together and she shouts Peter when referring to Spider-Man, they know, she realizes that that could be a problem. So, but yeah, I really appreciate it. And, I can fight, what was it? I can fight ugly. I don't think she said dirty. I can fight ugly. Yeah, this is going to get ugly. I can fight ugly. I told you I could fight ugly. That was a really great. And she was also the one who got the symbiote out of Eddie when he was near the CAT scan. And, did that accomplish much of anything? I guess ultimately it didn't really, because she ends up just bringing the symbiote back to him. Was there anything particularly accomplished by? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I appreciate that the girl also got to kick ass. And we have the CAT scan making Venom freak out. You're hurting it. Around this time, I noted there are a lot of short scenes in this movie. Like, he goes into for the. Actually, I'm not. Was the CAT scan one? Maybe. Like the restaurant scene, that was not that short of a scene, but when like. Yeah, when they come, when Jenny Slate goes into her office and they're sitting there and like, we're going to have a conversation, that's maybe 30 seconds of scene. And then when, like, he tells her, he tells her something and then he unleashes the symbiote upon her and walks away, also a short scene. I don't know if maybe some of this stuff, excuse me, I'm not trying to show off, I just have back issues. I don't know if it was maybe like R-rated, like maybe the scenes got kind of dark after and then that was cut out. It sucks that they didn't film this just enough in the shadows, or like that they ended up having to cut out 40 minutes. That really sucks. And like the end credits are really, really long. I read on IMDb they're 19 minutes. I didn't time them, but I think that's right. Unlike with Valhalla, where some jackass claimed that 20 minutes, or was it 10 minutes, was devoted anyway. Right. I have to admit, I enjoyed when Venom like says something that no one but Eddie can hear, and Eddie has to kind of, you know, when like he's on the phone with Anne and Dan. I also appreciate that, you know, at first it's like, you know, I don't remember the exact line, but at first we don't know that it's a conference call with Dan also there. So, like, yeah, I think he maybe says, could it cause auditory hallucinations? And then Dan replies, and for like a second it's like, is he hallucinating Dan now? Because we know Venom's real, but oh right, he's on the call, you know. And he's like, this parasite, could it make me climb a tree really, really fast? And then Venom's just matter-of-factly, yes, we just did. Like, weren't you paying attention? We did. I can do that. Why? I don't know. I thought that was a little funny. Just like he doesn't really understand that Eddie is talking to someone else at that, you know, or maybe he thinks that he's the one being asked, and he's like, just yeah. I don't know. It was very. What was this? The Short Circuit, Johnny Five or something. It was like, yeah, just so matter of fact, or maybe something Data would have said on Star Trek: Next Generation. Star Trek: The Next Generation. There we go. Knew I could do it. And you know, they're like, you know, oh, we could get out of here like this, and he's like, never gonna happen. I watched this with a friend, and he pointed out that the first 45 minutes were, you know, maybe better than the last 45 minutes. Or at least, I think what he specifically said was that he enjoyed the first 45 minutes more. And yeah, I do think that there's something to that. And yeah, we have the electric guitar, you know, making Venom freak out, and you know, he scares the guy into being silent. It was pretty funny. Like, just could you not play that? Because I'm trying to realize, and it's really loud. He's like, I don't care or something, and like he briefly sees Venom, like, ah. Okay, sure. You know what? I'm gonna turn it down. I enjoyed that so much more than Catwoman. There's so much wrong with Catwoman. And we've got the drone bomb kamikaze things. I mean, they're kind of cool. I just have to wonder. No, I don't. I don't wonder why they're suicide bombing drones instead of just a drone that fires something. It's because they felt that it would be more cinematic for him to be driving away from all these drones. It was pretty cool motorcycle chase. And let's see. And we have Venom swimming. And when Venom was climbing this building, you know, this black creature really high on like a wall, that really reminded me of Spawn, which again, this is so much better than the, let's see. Okay, so I mentioned Catwoman, Spawn, first Ghost Rider, all of those movies. This is so much better than, you know, those movies have a lot of segments where, in the case of Catwoman, you're like really frustrated watching it. In the others, we're just mostly kind of bored. You know, Spawn is a movie that makes it seem as though its titular hero really isn't that impressive or strong or cool. Just way too much of the time he's running away or he's having trouble using his powers. And now that I've watched the movie, you know, when he's inside the empty office building, you know, that's, you know, some of that is in the Eminem music video for Fall. So yeah, and when, you know, there's the thing on top of the tower, that's the Venom video of the, and yeah, now I get why that, when I first watched the videos I wasn't quite sure. And, you know, they're sliding off the skyscraper, and, you know, Venom makes the one hand and he's like, I got you, Ed. The fight between Venom and the SWAT people kind of reminded me of like when you play Fear 3 or Fifth Rear as Paxton Fettel. I approve. I gave that game a very negative review. I honestly, I've played all 3 of them 3 or 4 times by now. I have to admit, I quite enjoy all of them, and really, in certain ways, Fear 3 is not only not the worst of them, but honestly the best. None of those games are really bad. Some of the expansion packs are pretty useless, because they just get retconned out anyway, and nothing much happens in them. But no, they're all good. I'm not currently planning on doing more videos, but I might. Those are fun to play. I'm probably gonna play them again, at least. Apparently the network is MNBN, which I guess could stand for man bun. And let's see. I did think someone may already have made this, but just, yeah. You know, Anne explains to Dan after the symbiote leaves Eddie's body, Ed's a complicated man, and no one understands him but his venom. And what on earth did I write? Right. It's because I wrote the letter Y. I'll explain. And the one part of it, I read these in the dark, so isn't completely attached to so it looked like there was just like a slash between 2 words, and I was like, what does tin/dog mean? But it's tiny dog. I liked when Venom was in the tiny dog. That was, yeah. Oh right, some people have compared this to The Mask. I think that's appropriate. The Mask is less uneven, I would say. The Mask juggles its tones better than this does. But, I mean, if you're asking me which I'd rather rewatch, I mean, for action, I would definitely... I like them both. Overall, like, quality, I would definitely say The Mask is better. I enjoyed when they're, like, arguing about how to heal Eddie, and, you know, the Venom himself is trying to say, I'm not hurting you, and you're not gonna help me and such. Let's see. Which I know that chronologically that happened before what I've already said, but this was where I noted it. Let's see. Yeah, you know, Drake is like, you know, you stop bleeding in my lab, get out, stop bleeding in my lab. And it's like, so Drake is the guardian of the PG-13 rating. Isn't that just amazing? Like, if you had seen him bleed a lot, the movie might not have been PG-13, but several implied. I mean, yeah, Venom bites off 3 heads. We just don't see it in like detail, but that's what he does. They even, you know, Anne specifically says, "I just bit that guy's head off." To which Eddie replies, "Yes, I did that as well." You know, and then says, you know, it's not pleasant. You know, yeah, like 13-year-olds in the audience are gonna be like, did they just eat his head? Oh, they did. Thank you. And that did remind me kind of like, you know, Pepper Potts. That was really violent. And, you know, and when the, let's see. Yeah, now, if let's see, if Anne hadn't gotten the symbiote out of Eddie, then, you know, the climax would have happened earlier, because Riot would have had access to Venom. You know, Riot, I love the design of Riot, but yeah, just to briefly, you know, Drake has Eddie in front of him, and, you know, at first he's just like being stern with him and such, and Eddie won't quite answer, and then he symbiotes out, and he's like, "Where will the other symbiote going?" I really appreciate that. I have to admit, I don't know a lot about Riot. I know Venom, I know Carnage, excuse me, and I know, you know, a lot about when Peter had the symbiote. Although there was his suit, it didn't bond, you know, hence the teeth and the tongue. Those are, yeah. The let's see, the thing with the thing, Riot. I thought that he looked distinctly differently enough. You know what? You got the words. You make him a sentence. From Venom, I appreciated that, because that really is something that could have been incredible. Like, if they were just 2 black blobs, you know, as it is, they're still 2 blobs. Definitely you have a hard time following the climax, but it's not as bad as it easily could have been. The thing with the, yeah, you know, like his teeth are slightly different, his lips are slightly different, the eyes, just, yeah. And you know, transports the Venom symbiote, which really is, that's what she's doing. You know, she saves Eddie's life with the symbiote, and then she gives him back the symbiote. She was essentially just transporting the symbiote there, you know. And yeah, I appreciate it. Was again nice to see her get to giggle a lass, you know. Venom and Anne, which I guess makes Venanum. And let's see, and the, you know, the subtitles for, you know, she says, you know, BS were translated as the, like, you know, that's not fair. That's, you jerk, something like that. It's hard to have to retranslate it without using the original translation. Let's see. And the climax is a countdown to a rocket launch. And we know if the rocket does launch, then it'll come back and destroy Earth. There's no way for them to stop the rocket once it's all the way in the air. You know, he already, Riot, you know, killed all the people who would have been able to. And yeah, I have to admit, when the, you know, yeah, when the countdown to the rocket launching and such, that was when I realized just how fast the movie jumped from plot point to plot point once Venom was on screen, which, yeah. And we see that Riot has more and better attacks than Venom. And Anne uses this, strong audio to stop riot. Oh yeah, I did note here that was very Gwen Stacy of her. And let's see. And Venom seems to sacrifice himself to save Eddie's life as they fall off the rocket. But there's, he does still exist, as we find out not long before the movie ends. And let's see. Yeah, and there's Anne and Ed have a conversation, and then we find out, we overhear him in Eddie's head, and she kind of tell, is he still around? Because you're it's like you're hearing something that I'm not hearing, and last time that happened, that was Venom. And the turd in the wind, that was the actual ending. If it had been in the middle of the movie, you might have forgotten it, if not for the fact that it's in the trailers. But it's the last thing. It is literally right before the movie. He says the thing, and then he bites the head off, or eats him whole, I'm not entirely sure. And then he, walks off, I have a parasite. And then, I think that is the very, very last thing. And, maybe that's why there's 19 minutes of end credits if you include the scenes for the credits, just briefly, I'm not currently planning on watching and reviewing Into the Spider-Verse. Currently, the only theater near me has it in, voice dub, not subtitles. And I also, from glancing at stuff, I can tell there are a million things in there that I don't know because I haven't read Spider-Man in a long time. And when I read, I didn't go all the way back and read everything. And I don't like sitting and just being lost for the entire movie. It's clearly made for people who know everything or who want to take a deep dive into knowing everything. You know what? If it was the only movie out that had comic books stuff in it, then I would watch it. But I have to really focus to keep track of the comic book stuff already. So, and Eminem's Venom is the first song that plays over the credits. Although, as far as I can tell, it was only verses 2 and 3. I feel like I couldn't have put the first one in there. I don't know. 19 minutes. And I mentioned the Stan Lee cameo, and San Quentin, and we meet Carnage, and we just have the brief. That really, the look and the voice and the whole thing, that's real. I really, really hope that somehow does get to be a thing. I mean, if this doesn't get a direct sequel, could they maybe work Carnage in to another movie that Venom and or Spider-Man are in? Something that would really, I love Carnage. Maximum Carnage is one of my all-time favorite overall storylines in comic books. It just, and just absolutely perfect. And if Woody Harrelson does the natural born killers thing, just paint him red, get some whiteboard markers, paint him red, and have him going around do that. I will pay money to see that in movie theaters. Now, the friend that I watched the movie with also pointed out that the car chase maybe went on for too long, and I could definitely say, I think you could remove at least 4 of the drone kamikazes and take out couple of minutes from the middle of the overall car chase. That would have been good. It was only when thinking back on it that I really realized I was enjoying it as it played out, but yeah, it definitely went on for too long. And that brings us to notes taken before watching. Now, I rewatched all the movies that Spider-Man is in except Infinity War. I couldn't get it from the library by the time I watched this, but I did rewatch Civil War. I watched Darkman 1, which I watch that every time I watch even a single one of the Raimi Spider-Man movies. I love them. The man has made movies that I love, but I doubt he'll ever, to me, be able to top Darkman 1. But if he were to do a, not really remake, and I think it's unfortunately too late for a sequel, but maybe it's kind of a reboot. I'm not entirely sure you have to build the movie around the origin story. You might be able to just do like in like Spider-Man Homecoming or Punisher Warzone, those movies. Just have it be, well, he's been around for a while, because his origin is not that complicated, but I freaking love that movie, and I really want more of that. Video game would be nice as well. Until you give me a new piece of media featuring Darkman, I will keep rewatching my DVD of Darkman 1. Also rewatched the Daredevil movie, and I did recently rewatch the Elektra movie, but that was mainly for Peppermint. Now, let's see, I watched Zombieland once in theaters, and then second time, I guess, about a week ago by now. Excuse me. Now, I did, of course, expect this movie to be very different from Zombieland, which is the only other Ruben Fleischer movie I've watched. Since that movie has a distinct sort of style with narration and such, on-screen graphics, and where, this movie probably be more conventional in that way, no narration, for example, but they are both weird buddy comedy, core concept horror comedy films with very dark humor. And I do realize that every buddy comedy has two people who really don't, that's the concept of the buddy comedy. You have two people who would normally you wouldn't expect them to get along. And at first they don't, and yeah. In the second trailer, human form Venom gets separated from his motorcycle, then uses tendrils to get back onto it. Very just cause. I would love this movie so much if there was a Venom on motorcycle form which resembles that motorcycle nightmare thing from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. That movie is a lot of fun to watch. Chunks of it just don't really make sense. I don't get why he wasn't just like stuck in the car and then suddenly what was the point of the motorcycle? Yeah. And right, in trailer number 3, we hear Venom speak a lot. His voice is perfect, but most of the time I cannot make out what he's saying. I'm really glad that there's subtitles in my theater, and I have to wonder if this is going to happen every time Tom Hardy plays a comic book character. At least we can see his entire face for most of this movie. Most of his screen time in this movie. Now, I agree with most that I have heard others say about how it doesn't make sense to do a Venom, not a lot of, just makes sense, period. To do a Venom movie that doesn't have Spider-Man. Venom's basic look is because of his connection to Spider-Man. I do understand why they might not want this movie to be in the same universe as Homecoming. And when I first took these notes, it still hadn't been said whether the movie would be hard PG-13 or an actual R rating. Now, like with Deadpool and Wolverine, Venom is a character where it makes sense to, it makes sense for an R rating. And I do also really think, if it's true that the 40 minutes, a lot of it was cut because they filmed that for an R rating and it makes the movie make more sense and such, they really should have just from the start, they should have said, try to film it so that we can edit around it, so that we can, yeah, so that there can still be stuff in there that would be difficult to do if it's a PG-13 rating, because yeah, the as it is now we're just stuck with this movie that should have gone further, and yeah, more people watched it than if it had an R rating, but a lot of people, I don't know. I'm gonna talk more about how I feel about whether this gets a sequel or not. I do have more notes on that. I have notes on that. Anyway, it's an R rating. There's also the worry that if they do try to put them in a Spider-Man movie again, it might fail. People might think it's too soon to see that, and this is the first time we've had a Venom solo movie, and there is definitely something to explore with Venom that doesn't need to have Spider-Man in it. It's just strange to not have Spider-Man as the jumping off point for that. That just, yeah, now it's obviously, if they're going to use this, the continuity of this film in a Spider-Man movie, I'm not saying you can't do that, I'm just saying it doesn't make sense for it to then go to Spider-Man and then back to Eddie. You know, you can't have the same dynamic as you do in the comics for that. I was going to say something. What was I going to say? Can I at all remember what I was going to say? Let's see. Let's see. Right, in the comics, Venom eats people. If Venom eats anyone or tears limbs off, and it's PG-13, will have to be implied off-screen, like how deaths are bloodless in PG-13 movies. The bullets just make everyone real sleepy. Even if it's R, it can only be so gory and gruesome before it becomes NC-17, which is something we see in Predator 2, for example. I had forgotten, but in the deleted scene of The Amazing Spider-Man 1, the lizard actually does bite the head, possibly off, of the guy who threatened to use vets as human test subjects for the lizard formula. It's done as POV from his, not lizard's, perspective, and no deleted scene on my DVD anyway shows his body after that. So, you know, and in the trailers there's at least one biting the head, possibly off, POV shot in the trailers. And yeah, you know, so in the movie there's 2 or 3 of those times, and yeah, it is ultimately a, let's see, yeah, you know, that's what they landed on, that POV. See, again, that is crazy. It's okay for a 13-year-old to see someone's head being bitten off, someone possibly being eaten, as long as you only see it from the point of view of the person being eaten. Doesn't that make it all the more horrifying? That then it's like it's us being eaten. Yeah. The MPA don't always make sense. And, you know, we were wondering if there's going to be a cameo by Peter Parker and or Spider-Man, and if so, if it would be played by Tom Holland. The only Spider-Man in this is the Into the Spider-Verse portion after the end credits. And let's see. Right, and you know, since this version of Venom hasn't been in contact with Spider-Man before it's in contact with Eddie Brock, that, you know, means it'll not have any of Spider-Man's abilities, such as web use, and, you know, it could be an argument for still being able to attach to any surface, that the symbiote can do that. You know, Spider-Man logo on its chest, you know, it has a different logo. So, yeah, it has something on its chest. The face does still look like Spider-Man's, especially with the eyes, you know. Slight variation on both shape and color, but other than that, you see exposed teeth a lot of the time. Well, it doesn't actually mean that doesn't actually mean that he never closes his mouth. That's just what they thought looked better. And yeah. And yeah, and here, maybe either as a cameo in this or in future movies, it will come into contact with Spider-Man and thus have his powers in the future. And let's see. Right, and the infamous rolling down the street. Rolling down the street like a toad in the wind. I feel like the response to that shouldn't be, "What the hell are you?" but "What the hell?" No one says that. And Sarah from the Cinema Snob group said on Midnight Screening of Kin that she thought this movie looks bad, even terrible. I can somewhat see what she means, but I did still have high expectations, and I enjoyed myself a lot. There are a lot of movies that I've heard people praise that I thought were way less interesting than this. And that's also, when you look at like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, excuse me. Again, not trying to show off or anything, just helps my back issues. I think Rotten Tomatoes has it, I think last I checked at least, had it at like 35% out of 100%. There are some people who are saying, oh, this is not 35% bad. I don't know if all of those people necessarily realize, and I don't blame them if they don't. That doesn't mean that like a majority of critics have said, oh, this is like a 3 out of 10. Or 3.5 out of 10. That's not what it means. It just means that the average, of all the reviews, positive versus negative, yeah, it leans towards the negative, but it really, and a lot of those reviews, it's like, well, I can't give this movie a glowing recommendation because look at all that's wrong with it. That doesn't mean that it's not fun to watch. Again, there are movies that have incredibly positive, like, let's see, what's a good example? I guess I can't offhand think of. Personally, I love movies like The Godfather and Lord of the Rings, but there are a lot of people who wouldn't be interested in them, and if you just look at what critics say, then they were more praised than movies that the people who don't like those movies might enjoy a lot more. Now, for Kamikaze, Eminem did a song for the soundtrack that's simply called Venom. Great track, great album, so is Revival. Screw the haters. I've listened to it pretty much at least once a day ever since the album dropped. Not just the song, full album, start to finish. I love the recently released music video for Venom, and before that also the one for Fall, which obviously is, connected to even if you don't. Even before I saw that scenes from the music video were filmed the same set as scenes in this, or something that looks very much like it at least. It's pretty clearly about the symbiote. Excuse me. Now, and as I mentioned, wouldn't be heard during the movie, but playing over the end credits. And as of at least the 24th of the 9th, it's used in TV spots and such. Similar to other times music has been used to promote, films. Very cool. And, in part they use the knock knock let the devil in part. And, I appreciate that, didn't end up being an amazing movie. Didn't he also do one for like the first Scary Movie? And I think it even was called Scary Movie or Scary Movies, something like that. So, it's not like he only makes music for amazing movies, but I certainly do hear that Southpaw is supposed to be amazing. I'm just not really. I watched all the first 5 Rocky movies. I think that might be about what I have in me when it comes to watching movies about people who do I love The Wrestler, but it doesn't seem like it. I forget. was it maybe Rocky 3? I think Cinema Snob said that Southpaw looked like Rocky 3 with, you know, this, if this particular thing happened that you see in Southpaw. I'm not going to spoil it, even if it's in the trailers for Southpaw. Yeah, I'm not particularly into, you know, movies like that. Now, back to this one. It makes a ton of sense for Eminem to do a song for this movie and this character. In some ways, he's a lot like Venom the character, which is also what's, you know, yeah, in both the song and the music video, you know, it's very clear that is what, I forget, someone made a video called something like top 10 things you missed in Eminem's Venom video, something like that, you know, and yeah, he points out, you know, yeah, Slim Shady is Venom. Now, right, in his personal life, he can do really bad things. He has more than one personality that struggle whether to do something really bad or something that at least could be seen as positive. His music has a dark edge with a lot of violence in it, the lyrics not literal, whilst also having fun. He loves comic books. The two have so many similarities that I might start calling Eminem Venom. Part of the thing with Eminem is that I rarely feel like anyone who's making music is speaking my language, is talking about things that I care about from a perspective where I can understand. You know, when on Slim Shady LP he talks about, you know, how badly he's, you know, how he's struggling to make ends meet, how badly he's being treated by, you know, people who hire him for low wage jobs and minimum wage jobs and such. Just finally someone's talking about something that I can actually, and doing it in a way that can, like, I've heard some, I don't know, it speaks way more to me than, for example, blues, which does also sometimes go into that. Anyway, I first heard Eminem when I was a teenager. It was the first time that I felt like a piece of music was saying something that I agreed with, that I understood, that made sense to me. Of course, since then, I've been able to listen to a much wider range of music than back then. And now I realize, no matter how much music I do listen to, it's still only his music that makes any sense to me. To me, when it comes to music, there's Eminem, and then there's everything else, you know. On occasion I will express it as, when it comes to music, there's Eminem, then rap and parody artists, and then there's everything else. But yeah, Dan Casey from Nerdist makes fun of Tom Hardy's terrible New York accent, rightfully so, and it is as bad in the movie as it is in the trailers. Though I have to admit, considering how much it bothered me in the trailers, at least once I heard Dan make fun of it, I thought that it would bother me way more in the movie. It honestly didn't really. Now, I'm not sure I've seen enough of his movies, you know, Tom Hardy's movies, which the voice typing god is, that's enough of your smoothies, to know the answer. But hasn't he been able to do a good American accent at least once in his career? Which makes me wonder what was going on with the director to let him continue using the accent while filming. And I guess he was intimidated by him. That does make sense. But then I've also read that he always does, he really often does weird accents. Was he the one who decided on Bane's voice? Because that certainly is weird. But I just figured, I mean, isn't a lot of that like the production, the sound production? I mean, did he have a lot of impact on that? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I haven't seen him in that many movies. I realize that I should. Maybe at some point I will. I appreciate that we got to see Venom in the full flesh, so to speak, for, he had a pretty good amount of screen time without us becoming just like used to it, but I didn't feel like there was just way too little of it. And from the trailer, he called them symbiotes. No, he calls them symbiotes. No one but you calls them symbiotes. Now, let's see. I don't know what that means. the movie, is put out by Sony Pictures, same studio behind The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. I love a lot about the second movie, but I will admit it's overstuffed. I don't have much negative to say about the first one. I feel like that other than Spider-Man 3, every Spider-Man movie is better than the ones that came before it. I have to admit, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite, but I do acknowledge that Homecoming is better. But just, yeah, I've already talked about why. Now, they were also the ones behind Raimi's 3 movies, and, pushed him to overstuff the third movie. Now, yeah, so I was wondering if they would make some of the same mistakes that they did with those movies, and I mean, I do think that, this has bigger tonal dissonance problems than those movies, but certainly they also have, to balance these, some of the time, it's Gwen and Peter being cute, talking about how, she can't laugh in that adorable way, and she can't, rub her nose like that, and he can't look at her with her eye, and be communicating with his eyes. She looks really great. And then it also has glowing blue Jamie Foxx, sapping power and shooting electricity and such. Those are some very different kinds of, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's in the same movie. Now, this also noted just from the trailers, the voice is right, nice deep Venom sadism and brutality is right, although ultimately in the film there's not that much of it. I thought I had, let's see, I forget how, maybe a TV spot or something, when seemed to make it sound as though Venom was trying to talk Eddie into, let's eat the heads of the guys we just beat up in your apartment. But then in the movie he says, let's cut their heads off and stack the heads in one and the bodies in another, which, at that point it just, wouldn't you say his collection's complete? It's just, I don't know. And the size is exactly right. Venom should be huge. Spider-Man 3 had him at human size, one of the countless things that movie got wrong about Venom in general. Well, he looks about right when separated from Eddie right before he's blown up. Again, I just rewatched the movie. I watched it twice. Once without the riff tracks, which is the first time in a long time I have, and once with. I had forgotten how hard to watch the scene of them dancing in the jazz club is without the riff tracks. That really is. Again, the Nostalgia Critic really, I don't need to repeat what he already said perfectly about the entire dance scene and how, right after you have the amazing scene of him tearing off the symbiote in the clock tower and it landing on Eddie, but right before that you have this goofy dance. And that's the thing, just rewatching, you don't need to have the dance there. All you have to do is or the big dance, the when Peter dances by himself. That's the especially awful part. Once he goes into the jazz club, then when, Mary Jane gets ready to sing, have her just sing a couple of lines, and then have Peter dance Gwen, if you've got Mary Jane around, I'm terrible. Is it there? Yeah, if you've got Mary Jane here, they're dancing up, close to her, and then, he tips Gwen back so she recognizes Mary Jane, and then she's like, all of that was for her? I'm sorry, I didn't know, and then she runs off. And then, the fight starts and that's it. You don't need to have the whole him dancing thing. It's so terrible. I honestly don't know what on earth they were thinking. It's such a strange thing. I really... Anyway. That's why yeah, it's a lot easier to watch that scene with the riff tracks on. Now, the rest of the movie I can watch. The rest of the movie I can sit still, I can pay attention. But that, yeah. Anyway, whenever Topher Grace was on screen, spoke, when the symbiote revealed his face, which is something that happens in the comics and can be amazing, but isn't in that movie, he was so obnoxious. You just wanted Spider-Man to punch him in the face repeatedly until he left the movie, or at least for someone to. And I don't hate Topher Grace as a person, and I'm sure he's in some stuff. He's probably, people want to keep watching him in the movie, but in Spider-Man 3 and in Predators, he's so obnoxious. It's been ages since I watched Traffic, and I only watched it once, but he was in that movie, and I did not hate his presence in it, at least not all of the time. When he's talking about, you know, if white people are always going up to black kids and asking, hey, can I buy some drugs from you? Then eventually they're going to start selling drugs. I vaguely remember that. I'm certain that was him saying that, and I didn't hate hearing him say that, even if it's a kind of annoying thing to have someone say. I agree with it, you know, politically, I agree that it is, it is not that, you know, a lot of black youth don't have a lot of chances to make it. And so, but it just, I don't know, it sounds a little stupid, and it's a kind of stupid way to communicate that it's not, you know, that black people who are selling drugs are not like all these awful, awful people. But even with all of that, when I watched that scene, I did not want someone to punch him off screen. Which says a lot, because that particular speech does sound like something where you would, you know. I just don't think he belongs in action movies that have, you know, big, like, I don't know, can you call Predators a blockbuster? I'm just gonna go with, you know, in movies like that, you know. And I've never watched That 70s Show, and I don't think I would want to, because the jokes that I hear are not my kind of jokes. Now, I don't know, some of them maybe. In Spider-Man 3, some of the people making the movie, when talking about Venom on like DVD special features, said they did not think that what looks good in a comic book looks good on film. I don't necessarily think that Venom's classic look would have fit the tone of that movie, but they took too much creative license to the point where we wish Venom had not been in that movie at all. At least, you know, if, I don't know, it would have been frustrating if the movie had just ended with it, you know, by the end of the movie, the symbiote finds Eddie and then the credits roll or something, but it was also just, it was way too late into the movie that Venom comes into it. Really, Venom, you know, the new Goblin, that should have been one movie by itself. Venom should have been one movie by itself. And I think Sandman could maybe be the supporting villain in the Venom movie that, you know, goes by itself. So that, and maybe halfway through the movie, Peter tears off the symbiote, and then like Venom starts going around brutalizing people, and, you know, something like that. While I admit there's something that could be called, or that could be considered one or more soap opera elements in every movie that Spider-Man is in, as well as this one that's been released since the first Raimi movie. However, they only feel like soap opera elements in Raimi's 3 movies. Not the two amazing Spider-Man movies, not Civil War, not Homecoming, not Infinity War. And now some reviews mention that relationships between characters make up a lot of the early part of this movie. And I was wondering if they would feel like soap opera elements. I mean, I guess maybe a little bit. Yeah. Now, in Spider-Man 3, Venom's motive for the violence he commits is to get revenge on Spider-Man. What is the motive here? Does he use violence against the Life Corporation, who are responsible for the symbiotes in its current condition, which, while it has some upsides, is at least not something he sought out. And it looks like he will be attacked by goons waiting for the Life Corporation. Is that it, or does he go for them too? Really, in the movie, he mostly just defends himself against people. Like, I mean, he uses Venom's powers to get up to the office and drop off the, so that everything can be revealed, which they don't actually say if it is, but I guess we're supposed to assume that it is. And yeah, that's basically, and he goes after Drake, Riot. He goes after Riot once he realizes what's going on there. Some people have said that the thing was that it was weird how there was a female Venom and such, and again I can imagine that it is like, I mean that is, yeah, there's more than one human character who takes on Venom, and there's at least one dog, so that's again like the Mask. But yeah, it is I can understand the people who say that it's weird that the Venom, Anne as Venom, why she's sexy with the big breasts and the big sloppy kiss with Eddie. Yeah, I don't know. I can imagine it is, again, like, I can almost, picture one of those infamous leaked Sony emails where it's like, oh hey, did you know that Venom was a girl in one of the comics? Maybe we could make a girl Venom for at least some of the movie. What do you think? Written in all caps. Anyway, and the trailers make it look like there would be at least some Venom using violence against random robbers and such. And turns out it's just the one guy, which I appreciate. When we see the trailer, we don't realize that that's a guy he actually saw before getting protection money from Mrs. Chen. So that's, when it actually happens in the movie, it's not just this random robber. It's that, yeah, I mean, that does come off as something like the anti-hero version of Venom would do. Now, and I was wondering if he was going to rescue anyone. I guess arguably Chen might have been, shot. And does he do anything heroic? Which, I mean, he saves those guys in the apartment once he jumps out and the goons are shooting. And let's see. He could have just made himself bulletproof but instead he covers the window so the others won't be. And does he do anything good? And if so, does he do it well? He's supposed to be an anti-hero, not a hero, but also not a villain. In this movie, in the comics, he did start out a villain. Does he here as well? That's the thing. I do think that this could have, I think they were trying to, because he, when he attacks the SWAT team, he certainly isn't being very careful. And these are not like, these have nothing to do with the Life Foundation, as far as I understand. These are just, I will admit, I don't completely understand why it was like a full-on SWAT team. But, other than for the action scene. Again, maybe there was something cut, but if they knew that the thing that had been reported that was seen, grabbing people, and had it been seen eating anyone, I guess, okay, maybe someone did. And it climbing up the wall like that is a little reminiscent of Ghost Rider driving directly up the... Anyway, that means that the... Crap. See, when I do these videos, it's the one time a week where I can focus on anything. But then when I get a little off, when I get into a thing that isn't directly my notes, then I do lose track. Right, I mean, for most of the movie, he's using violence against people that, certainly that, Eddie doesn't want to be brutal against the Life Foundation guys. And the SWAT team is definitely not they're just doing their jobs, I will admit, it was a little, the thing with, mask, copy, and he's like, okay, mask, and then Venom replies, copy, and yeah. But there's the thing with the thing and the thing. I think basically for most of the movie he is Venom, the villain. He's just, using brutal force against anyone in his path. And it just does not have the kick that it should. I still felt like, oh, this is cool action, when really it should have been more like, what's of like a movie where it's something that really brutal that happens and you sympathize with the people it hits instead. I mean, having just rewatched The Kingdom for Peppermint, some early scenes in The Kingdom certainly have that. I mean, if you're completely detached, you're going to be like, oh, that's cool, but more likely you're going to be, oh, that's horrifying, that's terrible. And that's kind of what the Venom scenes should have been. I don't know, I mean, the guy who did Zombieland, can he make something that's violent that doesn't look cool? Or, I mean, I don't think there's anything in that movie where the violence is not cool. And I mean, yeah, I guess near the end we're supposed to be scared for the safety of the girls. I'm not gonna spoil that movie in this, since it isn't in like continuity or anything. All you know is that there's something that happens to the girls that make us fear for their safety. Actually, yeah, I think for that he filmed and edited it fine for danger, but yeah, he didn't hear. Maybe he didn't realize that he should be. Maybe he didn't think that he should be. Now, some reviews make it sound like they neutered Venom. When we said we wanted you to fix Spider-Man 3's Venom, that is not what we meant. There are times where it definitely does feel like, I mean, is this still the, eat human beings raw kind of Venom that we know from other media? Or, when he's like, you really should apologize to her. He should, but that's not... When did Venom start giving relationship advice? And, the very ending with, she doesn't know yet, but we're gonna get back together. Are we really still doing that in movies? Maybe that's again a thing like 15 years ago. Come on. If she doesn't, if she broke up with you, that's because she wanted to break up with you. That doesn't mean, it's not a challenge. You don't have to win her back. I really don't. If someone did to me what he did to her, I don't think I could ever trust them again. I mean, again, if they came to me and they were like, I'm really sick, I would try to help them. But I wouldn't, I mean, she got fired because she trusted him enough that she didn't keep her personal laptop under lock and key. And he abused that trust. Yeah, I would never let him near something he could abuse again. When it comes to the quality and potential success of this movie, I am incredibly torn. I don't want to watch a bad Venom movie, But if this is a terrible movie and it does incredibly poorly at the box office, there is some chance that Sony will agree to put Venom in the MCU as they did with Spider-Man. And in Avengers 3, Spider-Man goes to another planet. Excuse me. Again, as I was saying, I'm spoiling these. Excuse me. I'll grant that it doesn't look like it has any life forms left, but it's not, you know, that doesn't mean that symbiotes couldn't be alive, hidden somewhere. If Avengers 4 had some hint that the symbiote followed, hiding on Spider-Man, on his suit, maybe they could even retcon in a future Spider-Man movie in some kind of flashback that has him remember that he touched something black and gooey. Imagine having a good Spider-Man movie where the Venom symbiote is treated with the respect it deserves. No emo Peter, no dancing, no Topher Grace as Eddie Brock or anything else. I mean, I guess it might not be Tom Hardy playing Eddie Brock then, but I'm sure whoever takes over will have an equally ridiculous accent, or better yet, not. Just have him speaking like a normal human being, until of course he uses the Venom voice. And really, I hadn't really thought about it, but what Film Brain says about Hardy's performance, yeah, maybe he really wasn't the right person for, at least for this tone of Venom. Now, in Homecoming, Ned asks, "Can you spit venom?" If this movie is terrible, probably yes. And in Homecoming, Childish Gambino tells Spider-Man, "I like bread." Alright, I've got one follow-up. Do you like garlic bread? Let's see. Right, just to reiterate, I probably won't go to the cinema to watch Into the Spider-Verse. I rarely watch anything that's fully animated. That's an important thing that I didn't mention before. I very rarely watch anything that's fully animated in theaters or at all. I am just not, just like, it's like a foreign language that I'm trying to, I cannot. Live action, I get it, but now, let's see. Right, and, you know, Woody Harrelson's Cletus Cassidy, you know, will become Carnage in a sequel or spin-off. The only thing about that casting I don't love is his age. I mean, isn't he supposed to be like in his 20s, maybe 30s when he becomes Carnage? Then 56 years or so, although, you know, then I also saw some, like, you know, oh, why not cast, like, Jim Carrey, or I forget his name right now, but the guy who played Rorschach, and there was at least one other, and it's like, I mean, yeah, but aren't those almost too obvious? I mean, Cletus Cassidy and Rorschach, the look and a lot of the kind of, I mean, Rorschach at least would pretend he's not so sadistic, but at the same time, he is an incredibly brutal individual. So anyway, that concludes that. Let's see, there was this, right, and the thing, I mean, in this you don't see it, but in the comics, the Carnage was created by the, you know, the Venom symbiote, like a little bit spilling off and attaching to Cletus, and that was the way. So yeah, if they did one where Venom and Carnage was, you know, they could have it literally happen right after the mid-credits scene of this. And really, I think whether it's Venom, Spider-Man, or both, you know, as the heroes or anti-heroes, if Carnage is the bad guy in a movie, the main bad guy, then they could, I mean, it could be like a Hannibal Lecter movie or something, you know, just the good guys trying to track down this brutal killer, and we keep, you know, they keep finding these horrifying scenes, you know, the mutilated bodies and such. I think that could really work. And then, every so often, so that there's, action. You could have someone like, maybe Carnage runs into someone who resists, and so he has to fight. Not like a martial arts, but like someone that he has to maybe chase down. Excuse me. Or someone who, yeah, and you can maybe every so often have Spider-Man and or Venom have to fight like regular like purse snatchers and such. Now, excuse me, this is the first movie by this director to be PG-13, not an R. And 40 minutes were cut to make it a PG-13, not an R, according to Tom Hardy. I do think that it kind of shows that he hasn't done PG-13 before. It's sometimes very obvious, and yeah. Now, this movie only has 3 writers, which, considering, yeah, that's not too bad. And one of them is the one guy who wrote Con Air, Jonathan Hensleigh's uncredited rewrites on it. One of them did adapt the first, Shades of Grey to the screen, and the third helped write The Amazing Spider-Man 2, so it's not complete. I love Truth in Journalism of the Bootleg Universe. As far as I can tell, there isn't on YouTube a full and good version of that anymore, but I was able to watch it just today on Vimeo, so that's how you make non-bulky muscular Eddie Brock work. And yeah, if you've watched this far into the video and you still haven't watched the movie and you're like, is it better than Truth in Journalism? I would say Truth in Journalism is better. I would rather I think that if we could go back in time and change, and something that would still be the same is that a solo movie about Venom would be made, but we could change things so that it was a full-length version of Truth in Journalism instead of this movie. I would much rather have that. Just in general, love the bootleg universe. Now, I was wondering if the exposed teeth were just out all the time. I think also, I don't have allergies. I don't know why I suddenly need. I think Andrew Bridgman maybe made like a, college humor thing where he joked about the teeth, Yeah, wondering if the exposed teeth are just out all the time, or does he close his mouth when not talking or eating like a big boy? And I think at least some of the time he did completely close, and yeah. A while back, he bragged that he could get away with killing someone and not lose support. I guess we'll see if he can unequivocally defend someone who it definitely seems very likely gave the order to not only kill but dismember someone and not lose support. Okay, let's see. IMDb and Wikipedia. Sony's director shortlist for the film was believed to include Adi Shankar, known for his dark R-rated takes on the properties he grew up on. That would have been amazing. I really, how did that would have been so much better. I mean, just, I realize he wasn't the person who directed Dredd, but imagine something with more like the tone of Dredd just make it separate from the Spider-Man, from the MCU and Spider-Man and such. I really do think if they try to make this version of Venom fit in with, for example, Homecoming, that's ridiculous. It's too dark, and there's too, yeah, it does not fit. I will say, as others have noted, this definitely did try to have more of an MCU, like a lot of humor to, yeah. And I do get why, they were worried that it would be too dark. Yeah, I'm not gonna read all of this out loud, but yeah, read with Wikipedia, read the IMDb stuff, read Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, on Rotten Tomatoes, maybe don't read all the user reviews because there get to be so many, but the Metacritic user reviews I personally felt were worth reading. And someone points out, who came up with the name Sony Universe of Marvel Properties. The abbreviation SUOMP could be pronounced as swamp, which so far seems a perfectly good way to put it. Yeah, just briefly, I believe this is a Metacritic user review. The guy goes through some bad stuff, but then the symbiote comes along and makes it all better, removing the danger of their pairing instead of making it look like something you would want to do, because you would quickly become best friends and get superpowers. I absolutely agree with that, and that is a problem for the movie. Yeah, when last I checked, it had 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, with an average rating of 4.5 out of 10. And 254 counted reviews, were 177 of them were rotten. And the critics' consensus is quite well put. Venom's first standalone movie turns out to be like the comics character in all the wrong ways. Chaotic, noisy, and in desperate need of stronger attachment to Spider-Man. Audience score 88% liked it, with an average rating of 4.3 out of 5. So, yeah. And that is the thing. A lot of people enjoyed watching this, and you know what? If I hear about in just a few days that the movie did do well enough and they're greenlighting a sequel, I'll be there. I'll watch it as soon as I possibly can. In theaters, in 3D if at all possible. So it's not, yeah. I think it would probably be a good idea to get a director who has a better, just a director that fits better, because ultimately, in some ways, Ruben Fleischer fit, but in some ways he really did not. But, I mean, I would be more interested in if they were like, well, let's see if the MCU can do something. Because I do think the MCU could do a good, strong Venom, because they can do disturbing characters. They just can't do them the way this movie did. That's, But I mean, think about how, the Winter Soldier, there's some really disturbing stuff there. You've got let's see, some of the Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe especially their backstory. Well, yeah, some of what you see happen on screen as well. All the people, all the Ravagers who suffer a certain fate, which, yeah, I'm not going to spoil here, but there's some really disturbing stuff in there, but yeah, not quite like this. But that is everything that I had noted, and yeah, I think the I think I've said everything that I really felt that, yeah, the other various reviews, written reviews, I recommend you read them because not everyone, but certainly a bunch of them have some really compelling points. And I do think, people who watch this and are like, no one could possibly hate this movie. The people who give this negative reviews must just, be paid or whatever. I really don't think you paid full attention to the movie. There's a lot in this movie that is a really hard sell. It's not a strange phenomenon that a lot of people did not care for this movie. And I do think that a lot of the people who are giving it really rave reviews are intentionally or otherwise forgetting aspects of the film that I don't think that there are very many people who can love everything about this movie without at all thinking, okay, that shouldn't have been handled that way. But I think, yeah, or yeah, before you just run the movie through your head another time, or maybe watch it a second time or something, or talk to someone about what they didn't like about it or something. This is not a movie where it's like, how could anyone possibly? I mean, I can understand people who watched The Dark Knight and were like, this is the best movie ever made. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's never going to be topped. I've talked about that movie in other videos. It's an amazing movie. And so is The Dark Knight Rises. And honestly, Batman Begins has a lot of great to it. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything. So I'm not gonna jinx it by saying what's coming up, but I am looking forward to it. And I hope that you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed recording, and I will catch you next time.